Hi guys, my name is Christine and I'm a dating, relationship and personal development coach, and today I'm talking about how to pursue your ex properly to get them back for good. So the first thing that I want to discuss is really important before I get into how to pursue your ex properly, and that is, should you even be trying to get your ex back to begin with? Okay, this is one of the important things you need to ask yourself. So what I say to people who want to get their ex back generally is, you got to look back on the relationship, especially those last few months leading up to the breakup. Because one of the things that a lot of people do when they go for a breakup, especially if they want the other person back, they start to look back on the relationship with nostalgia. So they think about the beginning of the relationship in the honeymoon period, where everything was like amazing, where there was like lots of cuddles and sex and romance and all that, lots of fiery passion, right? A lot of people think about that and all the good times, okay? And I know that because I went back to an ex once, right? I went back to an ex who had cheated on me, but because I was thinking about the good times and I wanted those times back, I went back to her, right? For a bit, until she cheated again, and then I left her for good. I should have learned my lesson the first time around. It's a good tip, actually. When someone shows you who they are the first time, just assume that's the way they're always going to be, right? So it's really important then, right, that you learn that sometimes it's not a good idea to get back with an ex when you're only looking back at the relationship with nostalgia. Right, you got to look at the bad times and maybe give them as much emphasis, or even more emphasis, than the nostalgic memories. Because what you'll probably find is that if you really look deep down hard enough and think about those times leading up to the breakup, you may have already been thinking of a way out too. Perhaps you were missing your old life as a single person. Yeah. Perhaps you were kind of thinking, oh, I kind of wish I could go back to my old life before I met this person. I wish I had more time to do this. I wish I had more time to see my friends, or whatever it may be. You may have been looking for a way out too. It may have just been that your ex was the first one to do the dumping, right? Maybe you would have dumped them eventually anyway, yourself. But it's just because it happened to you that the rejection bred obsession, which is a quote from Tony Robbins. When someone rejects you, it kind of deflates your ego a little bit. And I think that's where some people get that feeling of obsession from, because they kind of want to prove to themselves and to others that they're desirable, which is one of the reasons why they want to get the ex back, so they can prove to themselves that they are lovable, that they are wanted, because they got dumped and it made them feel crappy about themselves, right? So rejection does sometimes breed obsession. In fact, it does a lot of the time. If a woman rejects you, for example, when you ask her out on a date, it's more likely that you're going to be even more interested in her for a little bit, because you're trying to prove a point, maybe even to yourself subconsciously, that you are wanted. And if you got her to be more interested in you again, it would confirm that belief about yourself, essentially. But you need to look back on the bad times, because usually most of the time it wasn't a good idea to get back with your ex. It's never usually a good idea to get back with your ex. The only time I would say that it is okay is if there was just a huge misunderstanding. Okay, so what this may look like is, you had a really good relationship, your ex is a good person, that they're lovely, that they're kind, that the relationship was good, and you were happy, and they were happy. But something happened, like a third party involvement, like let's say their friends started to feed lies about you, like they might have said like, oh, you cheated on them when you didn't, or there was just a huge misunderstanding, like perhaps they thought that you cheated on them but you didn't, or vice versa, and that's why the breakup happened. Yeah? So if there was a misunderstanding, then that's usually when it's a good idea to get back with an ex. But if it's something like your relationship just slowly deteriorated, then it's usually not a good idea to get back with your ex, especially if there was a lot of arguments going on leading up to the breakup. Both of you were unhappy, you were really sad, they were really sad, and you were thinking of your old life, kind of wishing that you wasn't in that relationship anymore. Those are the signs usually it's not a good idea to get back with them. But because you may have looked back on the relationship with nostalgia, that may have led you to want to be with them again because you weren't focusing on the bad stuff, which is why I put a huge emphasis on the fact that you need to basically go through the relationship with a fine-tooth comb and look at the bad things as well as the good things, okay? But mostly you want to look at the bad. You want to think about those bad feelings leading up to the breakup. But anyway, if you still want your ex back and you want to know how to pursue them properly, then this is what you should do. So if you got dumped, if you were the one that got dumped, and they dumped you for a good reason, and you know what those reasons were, and you have yet to apologize for those, then that's the first thing you need to do. You need to apologize to your ex. Now, if you've already apologized, then you don't need to, okay? And when you do apologize to your ex, if you do need to apologize to them, or if you haven't done so already, you don't just say something like, just send them a quick text or a quick message or leave a voicemail just saying something like, hey, I'm sorry for my part in the breakup. I'm sorry for this, X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be. And I hope you have a good life. I hope you have a good, the rest of your life, basically. Now, if they still love you and they still miss you and they still want you in their life, they'll reply to that, right? And they may even try and prolong the conversation. They may ask how you're doing. They may, be asking you questions about yourself and how you're getting on. But if they just say nothing, then you don't need to say anything else. Or if they just say something like thanks for the apology, again, you don't need to say anything else because they didn't ask you a question. Only respond to your ex, basically, during this period if they ask you a question like, how are you? Or something like that. Okay, so if you've already done your apology, great. Okay, so what happens next then? What happens next is you go into no contact, right? And you walk away from them and you basically assume that you're never going to hear from them again. So if they still love you and they still care about you, once you've gone into no contact and you've walked away and you haven't heard from them in a long time, and if they haven't heard from you in a long time, they're going to start fearing that you're never going to come back into their life. They're going to fear losing you because they haven't heard from you in a long time, right? And if they still love you and they still care about you, they're going to reach out. But if they don't, you just won't hear from them again. You just won't hear, from them ever again. And because I've already said to you to basically go into no contact and stay in no contact for good unless you hear from them first, try and move on with your life. You should be trying to move on with your life. Always assume when you go into no contact that no contact could be forever and you need to start moving on. Always go from that assumption that you need to start moving on, right? Because it may be the case that you hear from them tomorrow, but it may be the case that you don't hear from them for a few weeks or for a few months, or it may even be the case that you never hear from them ever again. Right? And you have to kind of assume that maybe it's going to be never ever again. So you should start moving on with your life. You shouldn't be waiting by the phone or crossing days off the calendar, counting the days of how long it's been since you last spoke to them. Okay? You need to start moving on with your life. Okay? And if they do reach out to you, right? This is the next key. What happens if they do reach out to you? If they do reach out to you and they say, hey, how are you? What have you been up to? You could say something to them like, hey, yeah, I've been really good, thanks, hope you're well too. We should have a catch-up sometime. Let me know when you're available. Say something like that, right? And if they're still interested in you and they really, really are serious about getting back together with you, they will jump at that. They'll be like, oh yeah, I'm available this Saturday, I'm available Friday, I'm available Tuesday afternoon, I'm available at 1 a.m. at midnight, or whatever it may be, things like that. They'll say those things. They'll let you know when they're available, right? Which is why it's a good idea to say, hey, it's great to hear from you. I'm doing really well. We should have a catch up. When are you available? That's what you should. That should be the last thing you say to them in that last piece of in that message. That's how you should leave it. You should say, when are you available to hang out, to meet up, and then you meet up with them, right? And you have a little date with them and see how things go. But you have to be very, very careful with this, okay? Because like I said, an ex usually is an ex for a reason. And it's never usually a good idea to get back with an ex. It's always better if you've been broken up with, if you've been dumped, to actually move on with your life and actually find an upgrade. Find someone who is better looking than your ex, who is nicer to you than what your ex was, who has probably better life prospects than your ex. Just an upgrade in general, right? That's what you should be going for. So, that's basically what you should do. So thank you so much for watching. If you would like to get in touch with me personally and you would like coaching with me, then please go to www.christinelovridge.com and I shall talk to you again very soon. Goodbye.